Welcome back to Ryan Runs. Welcome back everybody to Ryan Runs. I know it's been a bit. I've been in Idaho. So for those of you who don't know, I married in Idaho and now we find ourselves there 2 to 3 times a year. We got lucky this year because it was during the Eastern Idaho State Fair. It's usually, when the kids are in school. So I truly mean we got lucky. And if you hung around Facebook or Twitter, you might have even seen my picture of what looked like something between a hamburger and a donut sandwich, which I guess still isn't a thing, but plenty of food to speak of. Trout fish tacos were also quite nice. Fried alligator. I don't know how rare any of this is, especially for a fair, but teriyaki chicken on ham fried rice. It's a tradition up around there. Tiger ears, have you heard of? Scone nuggets, pork chop on a stick, fried cheese curds, not fried cheese curds, all washed down with a little kind of strawberry lemonade slushy thing before my 2 types of homemade ice cream and 5 flavors of fudge for dessert. Oh, and I think a deep fried Oreo. At least. I'm sure I'm missing something in there. So all around successful trip. If you can go, I, again, truthfully recommend it. But you don't care about that. You're here because you might care about video games. You might care about 2 video games, and I might have 2 to speak of. It's a little different around here. You might notice I've pulled back the camera, pulled back the curtain, quite literally, the green curtain. If you're listening to the podcast version of this, everything's the same as it's been since the beginning. But if you're not, I'm working on, every time you see a YouTube video, I feel like they got stuff behind them that's interesting. I've been more of a this is what it usually looks like around here, but who knows? I guess since I'm doing all sorts of things that I don't normally do, like asking people to subscribe to this YouTube channel, maybe I'll actually decorate too. Who knows? Again, podcast people, you don't even have any of this to worry about. So whatever. What you do have to worry about are the 2 games that I have played, and I've put them together for quite the obvious reason, a geographical reason, I'd say, in that they are just Japanese. I was going to say as all get out, because again, I've been in Idaho for quite a long time. Katamari Damacy, or however you actually say Japanese words. Again, let's just up top, I'm not going to say them right for this whole show, and it's only going to get worse with the second game. But Katamari, I feel like people know about, from kids to older. Like, it came out PS2 era at least, and it's because the game is so recognizable but also so simple. I feel like you start out as a little ball and you roll up things that stick to your little ball. And as those things roll up and you get bigger, you can roll up bigger things. And this goes and goes until you're even rolling up cities and houses. And I was not going to talk about the story behind it until I looked it up. And now I have to, because the creator, Keita Takahashi, actually started out as a sculptor, which of course he did. Again, if you've even seen this game, that surprises nobody at all. But I guess upon finding out that he couldn't do that for a career, which sounds sad, I would love a world where that's less obvious, maybe. Who knows where I'd be. But upon finding that out, I guess he did eventually end up at Namco as an artist, which I could also see how sculpting might translate a little bit easier to, 3D character modeling or something like that. So he ends up at Namco, and he comes up with this idea for a game. I think it was called Action Drive. I actually didn't write it down. But in it, there was a king, a queen, and a prince, and you played the prince, who had a hammer-shaped head, and he went around knocking out humans, and I guess upon doing so, a steering wheel appeared somewhere on their head, and then he would then spend a lot of the game driving humans around by the steering wheel on their head. So, of course, that game got canceled somehow. I don't even know whose decision that was, but I think he did that one more time, and eventually he came to this idea for Katamari Damacy, and he pitches it again, and this time gets more of a go-ahead than he did before. But at this point, I didn't even realize, or maybe he didn't either, realizes that he's doing this from the art department at Namco. Like, he's not a game designer. He's not even in the right spot to get these games greenlit. So he comes up with this idea to go to the Namco School at the time, which I guess this was something that Japanese developers did and maybe still do for all I know. But they have kind of a educational department or school, and they actually farm talent from there, or even curate talent, I guess. And the Namco School was named, for some reason, the Namco Digital Hollywood Game Laboratory. And so he takes this idea for Katamari Damacy to the principal, Masaya Nakamura, and explains it all to him. And thankfully, the principal was like, hey, this sounds like the perfect project for up-and-coming students. Why don't you just design a bunch of these 3D objects? So I don't know how much of that code ended up in the final game, but it ended up in a prototype that he could finally bring to the higher-ups at Namco, that when they saw it said, oh yeah, absolutely, and greenlit the thing right away. And it seems like what came out wasn't too much different from the idea he had at the beginning. But I love it, and I'm sure everybody else does that has, for it being just unapologetically Japanese. And when it comes to, I feel like, kitschy or even funny Asian culture or jokes or however that goes, I feel like there's often that lost in translation acceptance or vibe to it, you know, like the poorly translated Chinese restaurant menu or something like that. And those can be funny. Who hasn't laughed at those? But I think it's unfair to... when I say unapologetically Japanese, I don't mean it in that way. Like, oh man, are these guys silly? Because if you think about it, there's got to be more, if not equal amounts of translation going on for these localizations. And I want to say this didn't come to the States right away too. But either way, whenever they finally did, it can't be any small effort to translate those idiosyncrasies, those jokes, or even just charm to another language, I feel like. So I'm not quite ready to say it's just a funny Japanese thing. I think a lot of care went into the game in that regard. The only thing that might prove me wrong is that I guess if you directly translate Katamari Damacy to English, it literally means clump spirit. So that kind of blows my whole theory out of the water, because that took very little, it seems like, localization, and is still an amazing phrase. That combined with the music, which is the second thing I mentioned about this game, which I thought was just amazing. You know, I was like, oh, this is kind of jazzy, maybe loungy. It's got like several different elements going on at once, until I looked that up as well, and that is not even kind of an accident. Apparently, it's from the Shibuya Kei genre. And again, I apologize to people that already know this. I feel like most of these shows are me learning things for the first time that everybody else has known for years. That's why I play old games and then talk about them, I guess. But Yu Miyake, who did the music, very consciously put it in this genre. And I guess it was called that because it came from the Shibuya retail district of Tokyo. And I guess immediately I thought of kind of shopping music, which I feel like I feel like it's still an embarrassment in the States. I don't feel like a genre popped out of that, but in this case, it makes perfect sense to me, because when they speak of this district in Tokyo, they also speak of it as being kind of a pastiche of culture, of even just creativity, but in that postmodern way where it's pulling from things that have been and using them however it wants, maybe commenting on them, maybe just by mashing them up, also having something to say. It's very much kind of creativity by way of curation or even collection, which now think about the game again. So whoever came up with that is a complete brilliant person that rounded out this game in just the most beautiful way possible. And I guess to be clear, I'm playing Katamari Damacy Reroll, which came out on the Xbox. Of course, might even be Game Pass, because I bought it. So normally when I buy it, it comes out on Game Pass a week later. So I don't know, look for it there, but I'm sure it's out on a bunch of other stuff. I never played the original. I've never played a Katamari ever. So this is all coming from a place of newness for me again, but just couldn't recommend it more. Like, all the hype has been just spot on. And that's something I could say for the second game. Also, a game that I feel like has been hyped up, was hyped up in just the truest sense of that word. Asura's Wrath, or Asura's Wrath, again, depending on how the best wrong way to say it is. And you've either heard this is kind of quick time event the game, or interactive cutscene the game, or... okay, that's probably it, actually. And it's because it is, like, that is fair. You play Asura, which is one of the 8 guardian generals, I believe. They're kind of gods. And you're fighting off this invading force of Goma, which are like evil or possessed creatures that range from any type of animal to planets. And you are trying to get rid of them and kill them. Eventually, you do that until the other generals betray you, and then the rest of the game is kind of you regaining your power, reaching different forms, and killing or taking revenge on all of those generals. That doesn't quite do it justice, but I think we'll probably come back to that. When it comes to the gameplay, everything I've said does really do it justice. You're either kind of in a Panzer Dragoon type rail shooting thing where you can rapid fire or charge up, hit Y, and then it throws all the missiles at them. Or you are in a very confined kind of character action space or arena where you're just, I don't even think combos are all that much of a deal, so maybe character action is wrong. You're just like BBB, XXX, Y, until your build meter gets to the top, and then you hit burst and you do a super attack. Or again, there are quick time events involved in all this stuff. As far as that goes, that's the gameplay. It's not the best of any of those you've ever played. It is complementary, I will say that, but really what you're there for is the story, because literally the things it has you doing as you're taking revenge is even the very first general you fight grows himself to the size of a planet, and you end up killing him by punching him super fast and hard in his finger that he's trying to squish you with. Have you figured out this is an anime yet? I'm not qualified to speak about anime. I think I've seen a couple episodes of Cowboy Bebop, and I might even have Evangelion queued up somewhere. Again, very young. This is like a big black hole in nerd culture for me. But I'm pretty sure and confident in saying that this, Asura's Wrath, is definitely an anime. And one of the reasons I like it so much is because of kind of the insane creativity that goes on in coming up with the characters, the environments, the set pieces. And a large part of that is because it takes hugely from Indian and Hindu traditions, which is why you're going to see a Brahmastra, which is this huge like weapons station thing. It just looks like half of a person with a third eye that destroys planets. It's why you'll hear about Vajra and mantra forms and stuff like that. And not yet in the footage, I don't think, but eventually you will also see something called a Chakravarti, and that comes from the DLC, which is okay, you might have heard two things about this game. The other thing might be that the ending of the game is hidden behind the DLC that you need to purchase. And sure, that's like a cardinal sin, you know, I feel like when it comes to video games. I guess it's more common in Japan. I don't know if it's just video games or also anime or however that goes. But luckily here, it's literally the best stuff in the game. If you hear a third thing about this, it's that the DLC for Asura's Wrath fits into that category where the DLC is probably better than the main game even. I feel like Minerva's Den, when it comes to BioShock 2, is another one that you'll hear about a lot. And it's because it really dials everything up. It takes the visuals and really dives into all that Hindu stuff. It takes the way that it surfaces the QuickTime events and I think pretty early on you're going to see when I'm throwing a punch, I hit B. I have to hit B a bunch of times, but it actually lays it out in a circle around the fist. Just, I know, very simple things, and honestly they would have to do something like that to make this not just as boring as any QuickTime event, which I feel like were cool when they came out, but we're kind of all tired of them by now. It completely breaks that barrier. It's entertaining on every single one of those levels. Maybe a more discerning eye or critic or somebody more experienced with anime would have something more to say about all that. But for me, and my inexperienced point of view, just loved it. It's amazing. I'm literally just stalling at this point so I can keep more of it on the screen. In fact, I should switch it right now so I'm in the corner and the game is front and center. And it's just, what do I go like this? Am I looking at it? I can pretend I'm looking at it, and it still is entertaining. You can even play it in Japanese. It's the lip flap doesn't match up, so I'm not even sure if you might need the Japanese version of the game. Wow, there's an idea. I could get the Japanese version of the game and play it again. That's how good it is. But, you know, if you're the type of person that played Metro on Russian, try Asura's Wrath in Japanese. I even turned off the subtitles. And if you're thinking, how did you know what was going on? Well, this is the thing. Just because it's in English doesn't mean you understand why your 10,000-year-old daughter suddenly turned into a spider Vishnu all of a sudden. It's still just pleasing to the eye, no matter what. So, however you want to play it, just play the thing. I'd recommend it more even than Katamari Damacy. And that's a great game also. So, I think that's probably it for the unapologetically Japanese episode here of Ryan Runs. If subscribing is a thing, always I appreciate it. I'm trying to build something here, and as you can tell, we're all early on in that process. Otherwise, you can find me still doing those book club for movie shows with Matt over at bookclubformovies.com. We didn't do a show this week. I'm sure I'll find out why eventually. But we are still going to do No Sudden Move next week, as far as I know. And I'm guessing Shang-Chi after that. I know I wasn't sure if we were going to do a show, but I think Matt has already seen the movie. I know he liked it, and it's doing great as far as I can tell, and I'm going to watch it anyway. So 2 weeks for that. I'm still making my way through all of those comics. You can find that on the Book Club for Movies, or even just my own Ryan Runs Twitter, or now Instagram is out there. I don't think I've even shared that, but you can find me there at @A_Ryan_Runs_, because for some reason it wouldn't let me have my Twitter handle, which is just Ryan_Runs_. Life's mysteries. So find me at any of those spots, and I'm going to do my best to get the second episode of Chasers up this week. It'll be on Marvel Universe Series 2. If you haven't seen the first episode of Chasers, I might have just said episode. Either way, check it out. It's a ton of fun. I'm really proud of how it came out. It would be better if it were in a studio, but later. So any of those things, check them out, and we'll see you next time.